So we're into the holiday season now, the time of year when we see a whole lot of police on the roads cracking down on impaired driving. A CBC News investigation this morning discovering that we don't actually know how big a problem that is nationally. The figures are incomplete and they are years out of date. Our senior writer at CBC News is Jonathan Gatehouse, and it is he who's uncovered all of these gaps in the stats with me in studio this morning. And good to see you on this, Jonathan. Give me the national picture and how big a problem you have uncovered.
Well, you know, it is significant. This really has to do with data from British Columbia. And British Columbia is about 13% of Canada's population. And in the cases of these sorts of fatalities, which also include drowning deaths and distracted driving deaths, it represents somewhere between 10 and 15% of the fatalities. And now, when you look at something like impaired driving, the data gap from BC dates back almost a decade. So that's a pretty big hole in the national numbers. And one of the consequences of that is that it has delayed the publication of several national reports. And what we have on the record now are things with asterisks and guesstimates. But the real issue here is that when it comes to road safety advocates or also policymakers, is that they don't have the information they need to try and figure out whether the changes that have been made in the law and in enforcement measures are actually working. And I spoke with Andrew Murray, the CEO of MAD Canada, and here's what he had to say about it.
It's appalling. I mean, that we're, almost 2020 and we're still working off of 2014, and we've had historical events in this country like the legalization of recreational cannabis with the big issue and debate around driving and what effect it's going to have, and we got nothing.
So the CEO of MAD Canada speaking there, saying it's appalling. The reality, the lay of the land nationally has changed so much, the reality, and yet we don't have the full national picture in terms of data. And as you say, it goes back to BC. Why don't we have BC's numbers? What's the explanation?
Well, here's what the BC Coroners Service says. They say it's mostly to do with the opioid crisis and the spike in overdose deaths that they've been dealing with, which makes perfect sense, except for the fact that this problem with the data predates that crisis. So they also will say to you that there are other issues at play, which include staff turnover, privacy concerns, changes to research agreements, and just generally how much work it is to collect these numbers.
Is there a fix to all of this, Jonathan?
Absolutely, and it's money, as always. If Ottawa and the provinces wanted to spend money, they could fix this in an instant. If you look at the United States, they've got a national fatality analysis reporting system, which the coroners in all 50 states feed into, and they manage to produce an annual report within about 4 or 5 months of the year end each year. Contrast that to Canada, where the last national report we had on alcohol and drug crashes came out 3 years ago, based on 2014 data nationally, but in the case of BC, 2010 data. So the Coroner Service in BC says that they're going to fix this, that they're going to provide their data through 2017 sometime this year, but that all raises the question that if it's that easy, what was the problem in the first place?
Exactly. Important investigation and a timely one. Jonathan Gatehouse, thanks so much.
Thank you.
If you want to read more about this, Jonathan's also put up a piece online, and it's right up there on the front page of our website this morning, CBCNews.ca. This is CBC News Network.